The year was 2003, and just like any other time in history, South Africa was experiencing an interesting period in its existence. On the one hand, the country was seeing some of its brightest days. South Africa hosted the ICC World Cup, the ZAR was dancing between 6 to 8 rand to the dollar, and Mafiki Zolo had just added Mlanjeni to the national list of songs that you should be playing at your wedding. Yet, on the other hand, the country was also being dealt a deck of cards which posed an annihilating threat to its light. South Africa's health infrastructure was under significant pressure as the scourge of infectious diseases aggressively increased, namely HIV and AIDS, as well as tuberculosis. Remember this advert.
Marcos, sometimes I feel hot, sometimes I feel cold. It's like flu, but worse.
Drink this now. You will sweat the headache and fever away.
Med Lemon, the hottest hot-cold fighter.
Let's talk about the 3 things that made this advert interesting. Number 1, put some respect on my indumba. Before defining what indumba is, the functional role that it plays, as well as how it is positioned within the context of the advert, it's imperative to embed indumba within the greater ecosystem of indigenous African spirituality. So with this said, it's almost nearly impossible for one to quantify and define indigenous African spirituality in one clean synthesized sentence. However, for the sake of contextualizing Med Lemon's advert, let's position indigenous African spirituality as a framework through which Africans see, become, navigate, understand, live their lives. The Indumba then comes in as one of many sites within African spirituality where the seeing and becoming and navigating and understanding takes place. In this specific instance of the advert, Indumba is facilitated by Injongo, which is an indigenous healer who is trained to specialize in healing physical ailments using herbal remedies. Had the facilitator been Isangoma, which is an indigenous practitioner or a diviner who deals with more of the emotional, psycho-spiritual, esoteric matters, the nature of the brief for this advert would be completely different. So it may not be obvious to the untrained or unoriented eye, but the explanations that I have provided, as well as the differences and the distinctions that I have explained, have been carefully depicted in the creative, because this meticulous attention to detail and the respect for African ways of being, the creative strategically prepares the viewer to be more readily receptive to the greater message that's being driven, which I will get into when we talk about the source of the advert. Number 2, put that on my mama. After the patient kneels down in front of Injongo and describes their flu-like symptoms, sometimes I feel hot, sometimes I feel cold. It's like flu, but worse. The Injongo then stands up, walks through their beaded curtain, which divides the medical pantry from the consulting room. The camera then pans almost aggressively across the room, almost as a metaphor for the franticness of Injongo looking for the right solution. Finally, Injongo boils a kettle of water using a gas stove or a prama stove, rips out a sachet of Med Lemon powder, which dissolves in the water and makes the concoction for his patient. And in the middle of creating and administering the solution, Injongo steals a moment to look over to a framed photograph of a woman he displays this warm reverence for through a smile. And this moment is significant because of 2 reasons. Number 1, it's the acknowledgement that we all, even esteemed healers, come from and stand on predecessing shoulders. So it drives that proverb of umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. And the second reason why this is significant is that it inaudibly positions women at the forefront of healing, not as a role that is annexed to women. Number 3, sihamba ngolayini. The depiction of individuals queuing outside the Inyanga's practice challenges the stereotype that accessing indigenous healthcare is taboo, even though it is still very much a private and intimate matter. So the long queue illustrates a cultural shift where seeking traditional remedies is not only normalized, but is also something to be celebrated, right? And in the same vein, the long queue also signifies a communal acknowledgement of the importance of indigenous health practitioners, reinforcing their integral role in addressing healthcare needs of the communities that they serve. Let's talk about the source, the thing that made the advert work. The Met Lemon Sachet's presence transcends more than just healing. It initiates a long-standing discourse of Western versus African medicinal practices. The advert asserts that both can exist. Traditional herbal remedies for ailments like colds can harmonize with pharmaceutical innovations. And this juxtaposition forces us to think a little bit more about the intricate relationship between Western modern medicine and indigenous African healing practices. And it raises both awareness of the potential benefits as well as the ethical considerations that are inherent within this disconnectedness, or within the interconnectedness rather. So at the time when this advert came out, which was 2003, Thabo Mbeki was our president. And so the phrase African problems need African solutions resonated as the prevailing mantra, symbolizing a defiance against Western paradigms of interventions. Paradoxically, this mantra also underscored the intricate dilemma of post-colonial Africa, existing within a predominantly Western-oriented global landscape. So the prevalence of infectious diseases like HIV and tuberculosis exacerbated this dilemma, serving as focal points for stakeholders from all sectors to sort out optimal strategies for addressing these challenges. And during this period, addressing the onslaught of infectious diseases, it required branding in the specific manner to convey the severity of this public health dilemma. Without inadvertently attributing undue credit, one might reflect on the message conveyed by Med Lemon's advertisement. And that message would be, sometimes the solution encompasses a multitude of approaches and interventions.